I see you sitting there, exhausted from trying. You've done everything you were supposed to do. You showed up. You put in the effort. You changed what needed changing. You released what needed releasing. You worked on yourself in ways that felt impossible, and you did it anyway. And still, nothing has moved. Still, you're here, in the same place, wondering what else you're supposed to do when you've already done everything. I'm not going to tell you that something's about to shift. I'm not going to say that your breakthrough is just around the corner, or that all this effort is about to pay off. Because I know you've heard that before. I know you've clung to those promises and then felt them dissolve when another day passed and nothing changed. And I'm not here to add to that cycle of hope and disappointment. What I want to talk about is what's actually happening right now, in this space where you've done all the right things and the results haven't come. Because there is something happening. It's just not visible. It's not measurable. It doesn't show up in ways you can point to and say, "See, it's working." But that doesn't mean it's not real. You're in a waiting phase. And I know that phrase might make you want to stop listening, because waiting feels like the problem, not the explanation. You've been waiting. You're tired of waiting. You want to be done waiting. And here I am, telling you that's what this is. But here's what I mean. A waiting phase isn't empty time. It's not the universe stalling while it figures out what to do with you. It's not punishment for something you did wrong, and it's not a test to see how patient you can be. A waiting phase is a period of internal reorganization. It's what happens when your system has been pushed to change, and now it needs time to integrate that change before anything external can shift. Think of it like this. When you plant a seed, nothing happens for a while. You water it. You make sure it has light. You do everything right. And still, for days, sometimes weeks, there's nothing. Just dirt. Just waiting. And it would be easy to assume the seed is dead, or that you did something wrong, or that growth isn't coming. But under the surface, everything is happening. The seed is breaking open. Roots are forming. The entire structure of what will eventually become a plant is organizing itself in the dark, in the unseen, in a way that takes time and can't be rushed. You're in that under-the-surface phase right now. And I know it doesn't feel like growth. It feels like nothing. It feels like you're stuck in the dirt, doing everything right, and still not seeing results. But the lack of visible change doesn't mean nothing is changing. Your system is reorganizing. And reorganization doesn't look like progress. It looks like stagnation. It looks like you're spinning your wheels. It looks like all your effort is disappearing into a void. But what's actually happening is that everything you've done, all the work, all the shifts, all the releasing and changing and showing up, that's all being absorbed. It's being integrated into who you are. And that process takes time. It takes more time than the doing. Because doing is fast. Integration is slow. You can change a habit in a moment. You can make a decision in a day. You can shift your perspective in a single conversation. But becoming the person who lives in that new habit, who embodies that decision, who operates from that new perspective, that takes months. Sometimes years. And during that time, it doesn't look like anything is happening. But it is. You're not the same person you were 6 months ago. You're not even the same person you were last month. You've shifted in ways that are so subtle you can't see them yet. And because you can't see them, you think they're not real. You think the work didn't matter. You think you're still stuck. But you're not stuck. You're stabilizing. And stabilizing looks a lot like being stuck, because nothing moves. But the difference is in what's happening underneath. When you're stuck, you're trapped. When you're stabilizing, you're settling. You're finding your footing in a new version of yourself, and that takes time. Your mind hates this. Because your mind wants proof. It wants to see the results of all that effort. It wants external validation that the work mattered, that the changes are real, that something is actually different now. And when it doesn't get that proof, it spirals. It starts questioning everything. Maybe I didn't do enough. Maybe I did it wrong. Maybe I'm broken in a way that can't be fixed. Maybe I'm the only one for whom this doesn't work. And that spiral is exhausting. Because now you're not just dealing with the waiting. You're dealing with the belief that the waiting means something's wrong with you. But it doesn't. The waiting doesn't mean you're broken. It doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It doesn't mean you're being punished or overlooked or forgotten. It just means you're in a non-linear process. And non-linear processes don't follow the rules your mind wants them to follow. Your mind wants, effort equals results. Work equals progress. Change equals visible difference. But that's not how internal reorganization works. Internal reorganization works like this: effort happens, and then nothing. Work happens, and then nothing. Change happens, and then a long, quiet period where it looks like nothing is happening, but actually, everything is resettling. And during that resettling, your system is asking itself a question. It's asking, can I trust this new way of being? Is it safe? Is it sustainable? Or is this just a temporary shift that I need to protect myself from? And until your system answers that question, until it decides that yes, this new way is safe, nothing external will change. Because your external reality is a reflection of your internal state. And if your internal state is still reorganizing, still testing, still asking if it's safe to be different, then your external reality will stay the same. Not as punishment, but as protection. Your system is protecting you from moving forward before you're ready. Because moving forward before the internal work is integrated would mean building on unstable ground. And your system knows that. Even if your conscious mind doesn't. So it holds you here. In the waiting. In the space where nothing seems to be happening. Not to torture you. But to give you time to become solid in this new version of yourself before the next phase begins. And I know that doesn't make the waiting easier. Because you don't want to wait. You want to move. You want to see something change. You want proof that all of this mattered. But what if the waiting is the proof? What if the fact that you're still here, still trying, still showing up even though nothing has visibly changed, what if that's the evidence that something fundamental has shifted in you? Because the old version of you might have given up by now. The old version of you might have collapsed under the weight of this uncertainty. The old version of you might have decided that if the effort doesn't bring immediate results, it's not worth it. But you're still here. And that's not because you're stubborn. That's not because you don't know when to quit. That's because something in you has changed. Something in you knows, even when your mind is screaming that nothing is different, that you are different. That this waiting phase is part of the process, not evidence that the process has failed. You're learning endurance. Not the kind that grits its teeth and pushes through. But the kind that can sit in the unknown, in the uncomfortable, in the unrewarded, and not fall apart. That's a different kind of strength. And it doesn't announce itself. It doesn't feel impressive. It just feels like getting through another day when you don't know why you're still getting through. But that's what reorganization requires. It requires you to keep going when there's no reason to believe it's working. It requires you to trust the process even when the process looks like nothing. And trust is hard. Because trust doesn't come with proof. Trust is what you do when there's no proof. When there's no guarantee. When there's no visible sign that things are moving in the right direction. Trust is what you do in the dark. And you're in the dark right now. You can't see where this is going. You can't see if it's working. You can't see if all the effort was worth it. But you're still here. And that means something. It means you haven't given up. It means you're still willing to sit in the uncertainty. It means you're still capable of showing up even when showing up doesn't bring immediate relief. And maybe that doesn't feel significant. Maybe it just feels like survival. But survival, when everything in you wants to quit, when nothing makes sense, when all the effort seems pointless, that's not a small thing. That's the foundation of everything that comes next. Because the next phase, whenever it comes, it's going to require you to be solid. It's going to require you to have done this work of stabilizing, of integrating, of learning to exist in the unknown without panic. And you're doing that work right now. Even though it doesn't look like work. Even though it just looks like waiting. You're building the internal capacity to handle what's next. And that building happens in the quiet. It happens in the repetition. It happens in the days when nothing changes and you show up anyway. Those are the days that matter most. Not because they feel good. Not because they bring visible progress. But because they're teaching you that you can exist without constant proof that you're on the right path. You can exist without knowing when things will change. You can exist without seeing the results of your effort. You can exist in the gap between doing everything right and everything shifting. And that gap is where most people break. That gap is where the doubt gets so loud that it drowns out everything else. That gap is where you start to believe that maybe this isn't working, maybe you're not meant for this, maybe you should just give up. But you're not giving up. And that's not because you have all the answers. That's not because you're certain this is going to work out. That's because something in you, something deeper than your conscious mind, knows that this phase is necessary. It knows that you can't skip the reorganization. You can't rush the integration. You can't force the external to change before the internal is ready. And so it keeps you here. In the waiting. Not as punishment. But as preparation. And I know you don't want to be prepared. You want to be done. You want to be on the other side of this. You want to look back and say, that was hard, but it's over now. But you're not there yet. And wishing you were doesn't make it happen faster. What makes it happen is letting yourself be here. Fully here. Not fighting it. Not resenting it. Not hating yourself for still being in it. Just here. In the waiting. In the not knowing. In the space where you've done everything and nothing has visibly changed. Because this space, as uncomfortable as it is doing something. It's resetting your emotional systems. It's teaching you that you don't need constant validation to keep going. It's showing you that you can be in process without needing to see the outcome. And those are the lessons that last. Those are the shifts that become permanent. Not because they feel dramatic. But because they're quiet. They're deep. They're the kind of changes that don't announce themselves until much later, when you look back and realize you're not the person you were when this started. You're someone who can wait without falling apart. You're someone who can do the work even when the work doesn't bring immediate results. You're someone who can sit in the unknown and not let it destroy you. And maybe right now, in this moment, that doesn't feel like enough. Maybe you want more than that. Maybe you want the external reality to shift. Maybe you want the proof that all of this mattered. But the proof isn't in the external. The proof is in the fact that you're still here. Still breathing. Still trying. Still willing to sit with the discomfort of not knowing. That's the reorganization. That's the internal shift. And it's happening whether you can see it or not. So if you take anything from this, let it be this. You don't need to see the change for the change to be real. You don't need external proof for the internal work to matter. You don't need everything to shift right now for you to be exactly where you need to be. You're in a waiting phase. And waiting phases are non-linear. They don't follow a clear trajectory. They don't give you milestones to measure progress. They just ask you to be here. To keep showing up. To trust that even when nothing looks different, something fundamental is resettling inside you. And that resettling is what allows the next phase to begin. Not because you forced it. Not because you did one more thing. but because you gave yourself the time and space to become solid in who you are now. And that's what this is. Time and space. Not emptiness. Not punishment. Just the quiet, uncomfortable process of integrating everything you've already done. So let yourself be in it. Let yourself wait without needing the waiting to end immediately. Let yourself rest in the knowledge that doing everything right doesn't mean seeing immediate results. It just means you did everything right. And now your system is catching up. And when it does, when the internal reorganization is complete, the external will follow. Not because you pushed for it, but because it's a natural result of becoming stable in this new version of yourself. Until then, you're allowed to be tired. You're allowed to not understand why this is taking so long. You're allowed to wish it were different. But you're also allowed to trust that this phase has a purpose. That the waiting is doing something. That the lack of visible change doesn't mean stagnation. It just means you're reorganizing. And reorganization takes time. So give yourself that time. Without guilt. Without shame. Without the belief that you're doing something wrong. You're not. You're just in the slow part. The quiet part. The part where everything happens under the surface. And that's exactly where you need to be.